Today's daf we're going to be learning is Bava Metzia daf Mem Gimel. We're going to start at the top with a Mishnah. Hamafkid ma'ot etzel shulchani. A shulchani is a money changer. If you want to learn more about it, you can read Flashback this week, all about money changers. And if you didn't yet get to listen to Gefet about burying money in the ground, that is Gefet's topic for this week. It went up yesterday from yesterday's daf. Anyway, we have someone who decides to give their money, presumably to someone to watch, right? But they give it to a money changer. It's kind of like today giving money to a bank. When you give money to the bank, what do you expect? The bank is going to use your money. You don't expect to get the same money back. When you go to the machine and take your money out, you're obviously, we all know that you're giving money to the bank for the bank to use the money. Presumably the money changer in those days was the same kind of thing. But however, it really depends how you gave your money to the money changer. So if you give it to the money changer in the following way, im tzurin, if they were bound up like in a bag or in an envelope or something like that, lo yishtamesh behen, then they're not allowed to use them. When you give it to them in that kind of way, the assumption is that you want them to protect them and just watch them and put them aside. Lafichach im avdu eino chayav bachal yutan. Therefore, if they get lost, they're actually not responsible for them, okay? Because they don't take achrayut, right? Basically, you're giving them to watch, but you're not paying them. So if you're not paying them, they're a shomer chinam. And if they're a shomer chinam, then basically they're not liable if something happens to them, if they get lost. Okay, it's hard to imagine, right? I was thinking when I remember going to a hotel once and, they didn't have safes, they didn't have anything. And it was kind of in this out there place in the Far East. And we gave them, an envelope with our money to protect, to watch for us. So, you kind of think like, you assume they're going to assume responsibility, but according to this, they really don't have to, right? And that's exactly this. It was in a sealed envelope. The whole point was obviously not that they're going to use our money and give it back to us, someone else's money. Obviously, that whole idea was go hide it away, protect it. But they're not actually liable if it got lost. Mutarin, but now mutarin here doesn't mean mutar asur. Mutarin means untied, okay, unbound. The money wasn't bound up in any sort of way. It wasn't in a sealed envelope. It was just loose. I gave the money changer loose money. Now, if that's the deal, since they're a money changer, obviously what I meant is, watch it for me and give it back to me when I come back. But you have to give me this money. You can use the money while I give it to you like a bank. Use the money as you want. When I get back, you'll have my other money to give me. Therefore, yishtamesh behen. Okay, so he's allowed to use them. But since the money changer is allowed to use them, but they then assume responsibility like any loan. This is basically like a loan. Now, if I loan you money and the money gets lost, of course, you still have to return me the money. It was all about me giving you X amount of money and you have to return me X amount of money. It doesn't matter what happens to the money. Okay, now notice keyword here, im avdu. This doesn't sound like actually a regular loan. A regular loan, you're liable for onus even, right? Anything that happens to the money, you're going to have to return it. So we're going to have to figure out what level of responsibility is there. From the simple reading of the Mishnah, it sounds like it's just aveda, geneva v'aveda. And it's kind of like, and we're going to have to get into this, that the shulchani is really like a shomer sachar. It's like they're getting paid, even though you're not actually paying them. We're going to have to talk about this. Okay, but we're going to see there's a machloket, Rav Huna, Rav Nachman. I'm already giving you an into what we're going to do in the Gemara about whether you actually take upon responsibility for ones, because you're really like a borrower, or like, right, the shulchani is either like a borrower or they're like what was I going to say? Or like getting a loan, basically, that you assume all responsibilities. So we'll get to that. It's a balabayit. Now we're going to distinguish. If you gave to a shulchani, this is the law, because shulchani generally uses money. That's what they do. Their whole business is money. What do they do? Like a bank. You give them bank the money, the bank invests it. They want to make more money. That's how they live, right? You don't pay them usually, although you do pay commissions, you pay, right? You pay banks fees and all that. But, usually the main money they're making is from the fact that they can use your money and invest it. But it's a balabayit. If you give it to a balabayit, a regular person, I just give you my money to watch. You're just a regular person. You're not allowed to use my money. When I give you my money to watch, I certainly didn't expect you were going to use it. Right? Like when I gave my money to the people in that hotel I was staying in, if you can call it a hotel, but I don't even remember. But if you give it to the people in that hotel I was staying in, I wasn't giving it to them to use. That's not their job. That's not what they do with it. So of course they're not allowed to use it, even if it wasn't in an envelope. If I had just given them loose money, I shouldn't really be using it. Okay, now maybe you'd say that's a little different, but here we're talking about a balabayit, like an individual. I give it to my friend, please watch my money. You can't use them. And you're definitely not responsible for them if it got lost. Maybe that's why it was a bad example. I should have waited to give this example of the hotel here. And I'm not sure where the hotel falls, but a chenvani, if it's a storekeeper. Now, a storekeeper uses cash all the time, right? They're returning people money, they're getting money, they're using it to buy more stuff. Where do they fit in this whole story? Well, classic for the Mishnah, chenvani kabbalah bayit, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer chenvani kashulchani. Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda have a debate where to put this chenvani. Is he more like a private individual because a chemvani doesn't really invest money usually? Or is a chemvani, a storekeeper, more like the shulchani because they do use their money and, it's possible it's viewed like a loan. So that's a debate. Now we're going to start off with a very side issue, which is they didn't really like this idea of just having the money bound, that's really going to mean that you can't use it. Mishum ditzrurin lo yishtamesh bahem. Just because it's bound means I gave it to you in a way that you shouldn't lose it. What if I just bound them to make it easier to carry, right? If I'm giving money to somebody, it's hard to just give them loose change, right? Imagine me in that hotel, giving them just loose money. Why would I ever do that? Of course, I'm going to put it in an envelope. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's just easier to carry if it's in an envelope, if it's in a bag, if it's just easier. It doesn't necessarily mean that I was intending you wouldn't use it. Okay, again, if it's a shulchani and the intent is generally the shulchani spends the money, so then why just because it was bound does it mean I expect you're not going to use it? And that's why I said before sealed. It was not just bound, but it was sealed. If I give it to you sealed, obviously I mean you're not going to use it. Rab Mary Amar, second answer, B'kesher meshuneh, I tied it in an odd manner, which was an indicator that I meant don't use this. However, some people say that the second answer was actually not an answer, and it was said by Rab Mary, but it was more Rab Mary asked a question about it by Rab Mary. Kesher meshuneh mai. What if I bound it in a weird bind? I tied it in a weird manner. Would that be an indicator that I mean you shouldn't be using it? And the answer is take it. We don't have an answer. So either we say, right, it was bound and sealed, or it was bound and tied in a strange manner. Or not necessarily, or maybe that doesn't necessarily indicate anything. We might not be sure. Now we get to the real part of the sugya, which is the more basic part of the sugya. And I mentioned as we were learning the Mishnah, Machloket Rav Huna and Rav Nachman about what kind of shomer is this shulchani? Is he like a shoel because he gets to use it? Or is he like a shomer sachar? And then we have to say, well, he's not really getting paid, so how could you put him in a shomer sachar category? Maybe he would just be a shomer chinam. But if it's a shomer chinam, then he shouldn't be liable for aveda. So, and if he's a shoel, he should be liable for more than aveda. He should be liable for ones. So a lot of things don't really work here. That's just the intro. We'll see it all inside. Amar Rav Huna, va'afilu ne'ensu. Rav Huna says, this shulchani is like a shoel. They're chayav even for unexpected damages. To which the Gemara asks the obvious question, ba'avdu katani, but it says if it gets lost. It doesn't say if something happened, unexpected circumstances, to which they say, and we quote this many, many times this chapter, oh, don't worry, avdu here means kid Rabba, like Rabba says. Remember, the Amar Rabba, nignevu, the nignevu in that the context where he was talking about really means belistim mezuyam, which means someone put a gun to your head, which is onus. And avdu shetavasvina tobayam. Avdu means was on a boat and the boat sunk, and that was unexpected damage. And that lost at sea. Okay, and that's what it means, lost. Okay, it's we keep going back to this. Every time we have a problem where it says aveda and we think it should be ones, we just change it like Rabba. It's a very difficult answer because we have these clear categories. We have ansu, we have geneva va'aveda, and those come from the Torah. If it was lost, if it was stolen. It seems very hard to say that every time we have an issue, we just say, oh, aveda means ones and geneva means ones. Or gzela. It's a little bit of a hard answer, but nevertheless, Rabba seemed happy with it, satisfied with it, and therefore the Gemara quotes it all the time. But it is a little tough to say that the word avdu all of a sudden to say a word means something else, you could say, but when we have these clear categories of a shomer sachar is chayav and gneva v'aveda, shomer chinam is exempt, and a shoel is chayav and ones, that we're going to all of a sudden use terms that are used for a different category and kind of change them to mean something else. But in any case, works for them. So here's our answer. Now we're going to move on to Rav Nachman, and then we'll get back with the question of Rav Huna later. So the first question of Rav Huna was a language question, which we resolved. Rav Nachman Amar nen sulo. Rav Nachman says, no, I understand the Mishnah literally. It's chayav for aveda, not ones. He's not a shoel. To which Rava says, well, if he's not a shoel, Amar le Rav Nachman, leditach damar nen sulo, amalo have a shoel alayu. So you're basically saying the shulchani is not considered like a borrower, even though they can use the money, but they're not really. Well, first of all, they're different than a borrower. I gave it to them to watch, right? It's a little bit different. A shoel borrows. Here you're doing me a favor. Remember, the shoel assumes responsibility because kol anashalo, right? Number one, he gets the benefit. Now, it's true he has to watch it, but it's shoel is on his own initiative, right? I want to borrow something. Here you come and you say, the shulchani, I want to give you my money to watch. So you can see why maybe he's not exactly a shoel, even though he does get to use it. But ish shoel lo have, shomer sachar nami lo have. If you're going to already say he's not a shoel, well, you also can't, and then you're going to say, that's why you're liable for aveda, because you're a shomer sachar. But what money is he getting? The shulchani doesn't get paid. You don't pay a commission here. You're asking him to watch your money. You're not paying him anything. So how could you call him a shomer sachar? He should be a shomer chinam, and a shomer chinam should be exempt from aveda. So Amalei, Bahamodin alach, it's a bit of a strange language. I agree with you about this. It's not usually I agree means I change my answer a little. It's a bit of a weird language because it's not what he's saying. But he's saying, I'll explain it to you really. Dehoel v'neheneh mehaneh, because he benefits. Okay, like the bank. You might not pay the bank, even though we do pay bank fees. But let's say there weren't bank fees. Okay, some banks actually don't have fees. But where do they make their money? On the fact that you're giving them money. Now, why is that important? Now, we're talking here, you have to understand, I didn't mention this, but the shulchani doesn't actually use your money, okay? This is a case where if the shulchani use the money, of course, they're liable for onus. They're liable like a shoel. Once they actually use it, they become a shoel, okay? No matter what, even Rav Nachman agrees with this. But in the stage between the time where you gave them the money and then something happened to the money, even if they never ever used it, okay, they still benefited. Why did they benefit? In other words, well, we're talking about this machloket Rav Nachman Rav Huna. I should have said this in the beginning. The machloket is about the stage where you gave it to them to watch, and then something happened to it before they used the money. Once they use the money, 100% they become a shoel because they've benefited from it and they've used it. But until that point, we're going to have this machloket. And the machloket is, and again, we're going to see that, well, look, they're basically a shoel. If I'm a regular shoel and I borrow something and I didn't use it yet and something happens, I'm chayav and onus right away. It doesn't matter that I used it or not. So the question here is, what's the status of the shulchani before the shulchani uses the money? According to Rav Huna, they're a shoel, okay? Because they can use it. According to Rav Nachman, he says, listen, I agree with you that they're benefiting, but they're not yet a shoel. And this is, maybe that's why he says, I'm admitting with you. I'm admitting to you that I agree with you that they are benefiting, but not enough to turn them into a shoel. Now, what's the benefit? But in other words, the benefit helps us to call them a shomer sachar, just like the bank benefits because they have money in hand. So the benefit is this. If a business deal comes up, where they could make a profit off of, they now have money. That shulchani right now has more money in their pocket. They can use, right, more money at their disposal to make investments. So that in and of itself, even without them actually using it, that is a benefit. So even though you're not actually paying them, since you're giving them money to watch, if they can theoretically use it if they want to, that's a benefit. That turns them into a shomer sachar, which makes them liable for aveda if it gets lost. And therefore, have alayo shomer sachar. So that's how Rav Nachman explains his position. Now Rav Nachman's going to throw a question against Rav Huna. And now we're going to go into laws of Me'ila. I'm going to remind you of some laws of Me'ila. Me'ila is accidental misuse of consecrated property. So you didn't realize you're a gizbar. That's what we're going to be talking about. You work for the temple and you have your money and you have the temple's money. And sometimes you get confused. So you accidentally take the temple's money thinking it was your own money and you give it to a shulchani. Now, let's forget about the shulchani case. Let's just assume you give it to a messenger to go buy you something with it. Now, when are you liable in Me'ila? Not by giving it to the messenger. You didn't do anything. Right? You just passed it to somebody, but nothing happened. The money wasn't used. When does the Me'ila hit in that you're liable for Me'ila? When the messenger goes to the store and buys whatever you ask them to buy. What if the messenger goes to the store and buys, okay, and then let's just take the basic case. I asked the messenger to go buy me milk. I think that's the example we used last time. The messenger goes to the store and buys me milk. At that point, Me'ila kicks in. I'm liable. Why am I liable? Because the messenger did what I asked. This is a unique exception to the case of Ein Shliach L'Dvar Avera. Talked about that a different time when we had this sugya. Probably the last time we had this sugya. There's all different reasons why. First of all, it's all shogeg. It's not like anyone knowingly did anything. But let's just leave that point aside. I am liable because I told you to go to the store and buy me milk. You bought me the milk. At that moment that you buy me the milk, I've transgressed Me'ila. But if I send you to the store to buy me milk and you decide to buy bread instead, it's not what I sent you for, then the Me'ila is on you when you buy the bread because you're not my messenger anymore. You took the money and used it to buy something else. So let's look at this source. I think it's a Mishnah. I forget, but I think it's a Mishnah. Oh no, it's actually a Tosefta. I see. Tosefta Me'ila. Hamafkib ma'ot etzel shulchani. So I give money. Now I'm the gizbar of the temple. I'm the treasurer. I take treasury money, temple treasury. I made a mistake. I thought it was my own money. I give it to the shulchani. Now, at what point is Me'ila kick in? So this is a question of Rav Nachman against Rav Huna. What did Rav Huna say? By me giving it to the shoel, it's as if I loaned the shoel. By me giving it to the shulchani, it's as if they become a borrower. It's like I'm loaning the shulchani money. Now, you tell me, when should Me'ila kick in then? As soon as I give the money to the shulchani, right? Because I loan them money. If I loan money from the temple treasury, that's using the money, isn't it? So that's going to be the problem because the Tosefta says, if I give ma'ot to the shulchani, the first case isn't relevant. In sulin, if they're bound, lo yishtamesh behen. Obviously, the shulchani can't use them. Lefichach imotzi lo ma'ala gizbar. Well, then, if the shulchani spends the money when they're not allowed to, in other words, I gave you the money to watch. Instead, you used it. That's Me'ila's not on me. Me'ila's on you. That's like buying the bread with it. I didn't tell you to buy bread. I told you to buy milk. You didn't do what I asked you. I asked you just to leave it aside. There would have been no Me'ila then because if you had just left it aside. So the fact that you choose to spend it, that's your fault. But in mutarin, and this is the key part for us, if I gave it to you to use, right, then lefichach yishtamesh b'hem, you can use them. Which again, according to Rav Huna, it's like I gave you a loan. According to Rav Nachman, nothing happened yet until you actually spend them. That's going to work perfectly with the Tosefta because the Tosefta is going to say, "Lefichach im hotzi ma'ala gizbal." If the shulchani spends the money, that's when the Me'ila kicks in. Because again, now who's responsible then? Me, because I basically gave it to you to be my agent to do whatever you want with it. Right now, what does it mean to do whatever you want with it? It means according to Rav Nachman, it means that you're my messenger. You're a shomer sachar, who if you want, you can use the money. So if you choose to use the money, that's when the Me'ila kicks in. And you've done what I told you basically, which is if you want, you could use the money. So when you actually use the money, the Me'ila is on me. But what doesn't it say? If you say it's like a loan and therefore you have to return it no matter what happens, my area hotzi afilu lo nami. The Me'ila should be not when you spend the money. The Me'ila should be at the moment I give it to you. And it's on me because I gave you, right? Either which way, it's on me. But I gave you the money as a loan. That's using consecrated property for a loan. You can't do that. So Amar Le says, that's not a question on me. It says hotzi, but it means the point of the Tosefta is to say the Me'ila is on me as soon as I give it to you. Whether hotzi, lo hotzi. So why did it say specifically hotzi when you spend the money? Even if it's relevant, even if you didn't spend the money, because it's a loan. Well, I did Tana Reisha Hotzi, Tana Seifa Nami Hotzi. The reason they use the term when you spend the money is because the first part was saying, if I give you the money and you're not allowed to use it because I gave it to you to watch, and you spend the money, then it's on you, the Me'ila. And the second part is saying, well, when you spend the money in the second case, it's on me. But it could have been also Lohotzi. It just paralleled it to the language in the beginning, and therefore it's not a question. Because now they're explaining the Tosefta. Rav Huna would explain. The second part is whether you spend the money or don't spend the money, either which way, as soon as they give it to you, you're Mo'el. It's not the simple reading, but it's a possible reading of that Tosefta to fit with Rav Huna. So what we basically saw before we move on to the next Mishnah is a machloket between Rav Huna and Rav Nachman about our Mishnah. When you give money to the shulchani that they can use, is it viewed like you loan them money, in which case they assume full responsibility, even ones? Or is it more like they're a shomer sachar, who if they want, it's weird because a shomer sachar usually can't use the money, but shomer sachar, they're not, it's like a weird thing. They're not exactly a shomer sachar because they're not exactly getting benefit. They're not exactly getting paid, but they are getting benefit that they can use it. And that is as if it's like their salary, the fact that they can use it if they want. And that turns them into this in-between category where they'll be more treated like a shomer sachar, where they'll be chayav for aveda, but they won't be chayav in ones. And that really is the simple reading of the Mishnah, because the simple reading of the Mishnah is you're only chayav for aveda and not for ones, which again, the first explanation said, well, aveda means aveda ba'ones, like drowning in the water, right? Drowning in the boat. Okay, now we're moving on to another topic of shlichut yad. And we're going to see a machloket that's going to take us most of the daf to really understand. So I'll try to read the Mishnah without fully understanding it, but we're going to have 5 different explanations of this machloket, Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, even though there's actually a 3-way machloket, but we're going to spend most of our time on Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel. Hasholech yad bepikadon. Okay, so somebody decides to use a pikadon that they were watching. So again, we talked about this last time. There's 3 possibilities that can happen when I decide to use an item that's in my house. So either I really steal it, like I intend to steal the entire thing, okay? Or I intend to use it and use up some of it, like take your barrel of wine and drink some of it, but not all of it. That's really what we generally call shlichut yad. And then I just intended to step on it, use it as a step stool, never really intending, more like to borrow it, okay? So there's intending to steal completely, intending to use partially, and intending to just borrow it and put it back as is, okay? So those are the options. Now, in this case, what happened? I was shalech yad, but really seems to be talking about the middle case right now, where I intended to use part of it, okay, steal some of it for myself, but I didn't in the end. In other words, I didn't yet, and in the meantime, they don't tell you the basics here, but what happens here, but in the meantime, it gets lost, let's say, okay? Or it breaks, something happens to it. So now, I steal it at point A, right? I say, oh, I'm going to use this pikadon. I'm going to take some of the wine from this barrel for myself. But before I do that, something happens. Now, at the point that I intend to use it, unless we say shlichut yad tzricha chisaron, which we will get to later, but let's put that issue aside, which means, right, you have to reduce the value of it in order to be obligated. But let's put that aside right now. Let's just assume by just intending to use it, I already did something wrong. I'm viewed like a thief at that moment. Once I'm viewed like a thief, I'm obligated in onsim, which I'm not usually obligated in onsim unless I'm a shoel, but we're not talking about a shoel here. We're talking about you gave me something to watch. So I'm generally exempt from ones, but as soon as I steal something, remember, I have to return it the value it was at the moment I stole it, which means that if I steal your item that's in my house, it's no different if I stole it from your house or I stole it from my own house. But I decide to use it, shlichut yad, at that point, I'm as if I'm a thief, which means I have to return it at the value it was then. So if it spills and now it's only half a barrel, or the whole barrel breaks and there's no wine in it at all, I have to replace the entire thing. But at what value? What if the value changed? That's what we think the Mishnah is talking about anyway. Okay, we're going to change this later on. But what if the value changed from the time I decided to use it to the time it broke? Okay, again, this is all in a case where I didn't actually use it. So, this basically means whatever happens goes up in value, goes down in value, I have to pay the higher amount. So if it was worth 1 zuz when I stole it, and it's worth 4 zuz when it broke, I have to pay the 4. If it was worth 4 at the beginning, and now it's worth 1 when it broke, I pay 4. Either which way, I have to suffer because I did something wrong. Makes sense. Beit Hillel omrim kisha'at hotza'ah. At the time, okay, hard to explain, that it goes out. Okay, now it could be goes out from the original owner, meaning the time I tried to steal it, or it can mean goes out of the world, right, which is it broke. So we don't know what he means, and we're going to have to see what his machloket is with Beit Shammai. We're going to actually bring 5 different possibilities. Rabbi Akiva Omer. Now, by the way, this is a weird structure. Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai, machloket, and then Rabbi Akiva. They're in different time periods. Usually you have a machloket between 3 people who were living all at the same time, but the truth is we've seen this kind of structure a bunch of times before. I don't know how to explain it, but we've seen it before. The Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, and Rabbi Akiva disagree. It's actually, you can do a search for it. There's a lot of cases where it happens in a Mishnah like that. Now we're going to start with the, okay, so Rabbi Akiva says, Bish'at ha-tvi'ah. What is tvi'ah? The moment, sounds like you go to court. Okay, when the court demands you pay, we go by the price at that point. So let's start with, first we're going to start with the statement of Rabbah. I'm a Rabbah, and then we'll see how we get back to Rabbah. This is just background. If you steal, okay, this is not talking about shlichut, it's just talking about regular theft, but it's really one and the same. I steal a barrel from you of wine from your house. When I stole it, it was a zuz. Now, normally, what do we say? I acquire it at that moment. I kick into that price. I have to pay you a zuz. But really what I have to do is I have to return the barrel, right? So let's say the barrel goes up in value. Okay? Then the barrel goes up in value. And wine increases in price. And now it's worth 4 zuz. Now, when I return you the barrel, it's worth 4, right? Well, Tavra Oshakia, what if it breaks? I break it or I drink it. At that point when it's worth 4. Mishalem Arba'ah. Then I have to pay you 4. Eat bar mimela, if it broke on its own, mishalem zuzah. Then I only pay a zuz if it broke by itself. But if I broke it, then I pay 4. Why? This is an interesting debate among the commentaries. Either it's, what do we say? All the gazlanim pay kashadak zela. In this point, it's like I stole it twice. Because the first time I stole it, I actually stole it. It was worth 1. But since at the time when I broke it, I had to return you the item, which was worth 4, the fact that I broke it and now are going to return it at a lower rate, well, that's as if I stole it again. So basically, we go by the second shot gzela, okay? It's as if I stole it twice, by stealing it and then by breaking it. So now I have to pay by the higher value at the time that I broke it. Some people say it's actually, I have to pay on account of damages. I have to pay the 4. In other words, the 1 zuz I pay because I stole it. The 3 zuz is I caused you damage now because I should have returned it as is, and now because I did it. It's a very interesting machloket rishonim whether this is damages or theft. I'm not going to get into it. That's a whole off the daf kind of topic, but a very interesting question. So now, this is what Rava says. So let's explain it now, even though we kind of did. We'll explain it inside my time. What's the reason? Kevandi ita, if it was in existence, Hadran l'mar be'ena, you would return it as is, and it would be worth 4. So he shata the kashatela or the katarvala kagazal mine. It's as if you stole it again. Utznan kol gazalim shamim kashadak zela. But each barmi, and that's what we said. The gazalim pay from the moment you steal, and that's like a second moment of stealing. Each barmi meila, if it broke by itself, though, mashalim zuz, you'd only have to pay a zuz. Why is that? My timer. I didn't do anything, so why would I be chayav? And then I basically just have to replace the item I stole. I stole something that was worth 1. I replace it at 1 zuz. Okay, now comes the Gemara and wants to understand Beit Shammai. That was just background because we're going to get back to Rabbah. Tnan. Beit Hillel omrim kishat hotzah. So my kishat hotzah, what does this mean? If we mean the moment it breaks, okay, the second stage, remember? Stage 1, I use it, or I take it to use, not even use yet. Stage 2, it breaks before I even use it. If you're going to say, you pay kishat hotzah min ha'olam, Ubimai. Well, what's the situation? It went from 1 to 4 or went from 4 to 1? Let's go through the options. If it went bechaser, it went from 4 to 1. You stole it, it was worth 4. Now it broke, it was worth 1. Nobody in their right mind would ever hold that, because even if you say you pay kashat gzela the second time when something happens to it, like Rabba said, that's when it goes up in value. No one's going to say that you win because the price decreased. No, you always have to replace it at least at the value it was at the time of the theft. Because hatznan, it says in the Mishnah, so if the price went down, you stole it, it was 4, of course you have to pay 4. The ibi yatel, if you say when it went up, okay, so let's say, so if it went, again, from 4 to 1, obviously you pay 4. Well, that agrees with Beit Shammai, so he doesn't disagree. If you say it went from 1 to 4, what did Beit Shammai say? You have to pay 4. The time you broke it, right? It broke. Not that you broke it, but it broke. So ibi yeter, if you're going to say the Beit Hillel is saying, when it leaves the world, which is, it was worth 4, you have to pay 4, Hainu Beit Shammai. Well, then they agree with Beit Shammai. So this doesn't make any sense. So that obviously is rejected. Moving now to Amabeh. Ela pshita. So if hotza'ah can't be hotza'ah min ha'olam, because it doesn't make sense either which way, Beit Hillel is going to say 4, which agrees with Beit Shammai. So pshita kashat hotza'ah mi beit ba'ali. Hotza'ah must mean when you took it out of the other person's house. Now, not exactly the other person's house, but because it was in your house the whole time, you were watching it, but it means the moment you were sholech bo yad. The moment you decided, I'm going to take this for myself, or partially for myself. Well, if you're going to say that, then what does Beit Hillel say? Beit Hillel says if it was worth 4, and then it became worth 1, you're going to pay 4 and not 1. That's obviously the case he disagrees with Beit Shammai. And Beit Shammai says you're going to pay 4. Well, then, who fits with Rabba? This is why we brought Rabba in the first place. Rabba says you're going to pay 4. So lema Rabba damer ka Beit Shammai? Wait, then you're going to have to say that Rabba, who holds it if you steal something, right, and it goes up in value, you're going to have to pay, and then you break it, you have to pay the higher value. Rabba's holding like Beit Shammai. So we have a problem because we never hold like Beit Shammai. So you can't have an Amora coming generations later and giving a position that's based on Beit Shammai. So you can't say that either. So option 2 is off. Option 3. Amar lecha Rabba. Rabba could answer. Rabba could say the following. Beyeter kule amalu pligi. They don't disagree when it goes up in value. If you stole it at 1 and it goes up to 4, everyone agrees that you pay 4, even Beit Hillel. Okay, and that fits with Rabba, who just said that, right? He pligi bechaser, and the machloket has to do with something else. Now, what was the problem? We said there's 2 stages, right? The question is, which stage do you go by? And we said that Beit Hillel goes by the moment you steal it, the moment you do something wrong, which was the first moment, shlichut yad moment. And therefore, if it goes from 1 to 4, you'd only pay 1. And then Rabba makes no sense because Rabba holds like Beit Shammai. So what are we going to do here? I'll tell you outside so you understand it first. We're going to eliminate stage 1 and say you actually didn't do anything wrong at stage 1. When you just decided in your head, I'm going to steal this and take a glass of wine from here, you actually did nothing. Why? And then when's the shlichut yad going to happen? Well, the shlichut yad is going to come in when it breaks. Because then, since you intended to use it for your own sake and then it broke, that's when you're going to have a problem. Okay, so now, 1 second, let me see something. Right, and then let's say you break it at that, or it breaks, you're going to be liable because the shlichut yad moment is going to have, the theft moment happens when you use it, because shlichut yad, remember, tzricha chisaron. If you say it needs chisaron, and at the point you picked it up to take for yourself, you didn't actually reduce the value of it in any way, you didn't actually do anything wrong. So if it was worth 1 then, and then when it breaks, it's 4, your chiyuv gzela is only when it breaks. That's when you become a gazlan, and that's why you lock into 4. Okay, so let's just read it inside. And then Rabba fits with Beit Hillel perfectly, because he's going to say, you paid kashat gzela because you didn't do anything wrong before. So let's read it inside. Kipligi b'chaser. Their case is actually, sorry, I said it in the wrong case. It's their machloket is when it goes down in value. Sorry, my mistake. Because they'll both say you pay 4 in the case where it goes up in value. Because again, let's just go through it. Beit Shammai will say, again, I'm doing it outside. We haven't seen it yet, but let's read it inside and we'll go through the cases. Beit Shammai savar shlichut yad eina tzricha chisaron. It doesn't need to be depleted in value, right? So as soon as you use it, you take it to use, you haven't used it yet, or you haven't taken anything out of it yet, you're already obligated, right? That's starting at point 1. Now, in the case where it goes up, everybody agrees. Because according to Beit Shammai, so yeah, you were sholech boyad, it was 1, but Beit Shammai anyway says, if it went up to 4, you're going to have to pay the higher price when it broke. Beit Hillel will say, that moment wasn't anything because you didn't even decrease it in value. So the only moment that counts is when it actually breaks. And then already it's 4. So you're going to pay 4 according to both. But if it goes down in value, Beit Shammai is going to hold and this is already a problem. And therefore, in other words, at moment 1, you become a gazlan, you're a thief. Now that it went down in value, it's, if I stole it, it goes down in value under my property, meaning the decrease in value is on me. I still have to return it at the moment I stole it, at the 4 high price. Beit Hillel Savre, shlichut yad tzricha chisaron. Now, in the first reading, we thought that Beit Hillel holds that the shlichut yad happens, right? If it started at 4 and it goes down to 1, what did we say? Of course, you're going to be chayav. That's the shakazela. You're going to have to pay the higher price, in which case it doesn't disagree with Beit Shammai. But if you eliminate stage 1, because you say that you didn't do anything yet, because if shlichut yad needs chisaron, that means if you don't decrease it in value, you haven't been sholech yad yet. When did you sholech yad? When you decreased it in value. What does that mean? When it broke. So I decide I want to use this for myself, but I don't actually take any wine yet. But then it breaks and there's no wine left. At that point, my shlichut yad kicks in because now I've actually caused a chisaron. Whether I caused it or not, it doesn't matter, but I intended to use it and it was used, right? Whether I used it or it got used. Either which way, I'm liable at that point. And at that point, it's worth only 1. So then Beit Hillel is going to say, I only have to pay 1, and Beit Shammai is going to say 4. And that's a good, that's a good way of explaining the machloket. But I did tell you there's going to be 5 explanations, and we're only on number 3. So there's obviously going to be a problem with this. And let's just finish that line though. V'chi chaser, if shlichut yad needs chisaron, and I didn't decrease it in value yet. V'chi chaser, when it went down in value now, b'reshutei demari chaser, it's in the owner's domain still. Since I didn't do anything to it, the only time it becomes in my domain is if it breaks or if it gets lost. Then I become responsible, and then I have to do it from that moment, which is only 1. It's only worth 1 zuz. But problem is, Beit Hillel, according to this, says, shlichut yad, tzricha chisaron. Well, Hada Amar Rava, shlichut yad ena tzricha chisaron. Rava the Amora, now we're at a different Amora, Rava as opposed to Rava, but Rava the Amora says that shlichut yad does not need chisaron. And if you say that that's the machloket Beit Shammai Beit Hillel, and Beit Shammai holds shlichut yad doesn't need chisaron, lema Rava damar ke Beit Shammai, same problem as last time. Can't possibly be that Beit Shammai holds, Rava holds like Beit Shammai. So that can't be the machloket. You can't pigeonhole Beit Hillel into shlichut yad needs chisaron when we have Rava, who clearly holds like Beit Hillel and says it doesn't need chisaron. So that's rejected. Option 4. Elahacha b'mayas kinan. Okay, we talked about this before. I never intended to deplete the value, decrease it in value. I just wanted to borrow it. This wasn't to steal, it was to borrow. It's in my house. I'll just borrow it without telling you. Now, B'shoel shalom idat kamiflagay. There's a whole machloket here. What happens when someone borrows something without asking? If I borrow your item without asking, you give me your item to watch, and now I just say, I'll borrow it. I won't tell you. Am I a thief or not? That's the machloket. Beit Shammai savrei shoel shalom idat gazlan have. Beit Shammai says, you're a thief. If you're a thief, then the moment you borrow it, then you're going to be locked in at that price. You're going to pay that price. So again, it could be at the moment you decide to use it, or at the moment it gets lost, but you're going to pay either which way the high price. Right? V'chi chaser, if it goes down in value, b'reshutei didei chaser. Right? Let's say it goes down. Okay, if it was 4 when you decided to take it, and then it went down to 1. Well, when I decided to use it for my own sake, I already became a thief. So I lock into that 4 price. I have to pay the higher price. Beit Hillel savrei shoel shalom idat shoel have. I'm just a shoel. Now, what does a shoel have to do? Pay for onus. What was it worth when the onus happened? It was worth only 1. So I only have to pay 1. When it went down in value, it did become mine. I'm not a thief. I just borrowed something. So I'm like a borrower. I pay whatever the price was when the onus happened, right? So it's all, again, which time is the important one. Time one, when I decide I want to use it for myself, or time two, when the onus takes place. And that's the machloka between them. That sounds good, but same kind of problem we're going to have. But wait, Rava says that a shoal shalomidat, according to the rabbis, is considered a thief. This is just a general opinion. And then, if we say that that's the machloket Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, then again, Rav is going to hold like Beit Shammai. So third time, we're going to say this can't work because you're basically putting the opinion of Beit Shammai as the mainstream opinion, and we know that that's not the case. So finally, we're now going to change the whole way we understand this case. Up and down price changing, cheser yeter, is not the price fluctuates. It's that the value of the animal changes because when I stole it, the animal was not pregnant. Later, the animal became pregnant and had offspring. Or when I stole it, the animal didn't have wool on it, and then it grew wool. So now the question becomes, not that the price of the shuk changes, it's that this animal itself increased in value. So I stole it. It wasn't pregnant. It didn't have any wool on it. And then it did. And then when I go to return the animal, do I have to return the offspring with it, or can I keep it for myself? So Beit Shammai savre, or let's say it was full of wool, and then we sheared the wool. Do I have to return that sheared wool to the owner? That's the cheser. Okay, if it went down in value, because now it doesn't have the wool on it anymore that it had when I stole it. So Beit Shammai, who says b'chaser v'yeter, means I have to give it to you, of course. And you would think, of course, I would have to give it to you. It's a bit strange to say not. But shevach zela denigzal have, right? So I have to give it back to you if I stole it from you. Beit Hillel savre shevach zela de gazlan have. I don't have to return it to you. Kishat hotza'ah means at the moment I stole it from you, I have to repay it, which actually fits in with all the things we saw in Bava Kama. I pay it at the shot of the gzela. The fact that an offspring later, now it's a little crazy. It means I could steal your stuff and then benefit. But let's put that issue aside right now, because it's almost the end of our daf. But Beit Hillel basically says, Sheva goes to the nigzal. I can keep it because I just have to return it the way it was at the time. And let's see, we have machloket tanaim about this. After Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, Tanya, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda debate this issue. Hagozela tarachel, gizazavi yalda. Okay, you steal a sheep and you sheared it and it had offspring. That's Beit Shammai. You have to pay it all back. Rabbi Yehuda says, Omer you returned it as it was, without all that stuff. And in fact, Ikanami, you can even prove this reading. Katani, it says in the Mishnah, Beit Shammai omrim yilkeh b'chaser u'v'yeter, u'Beit Hillel omrim keshat hotza'ah shma mina. It says b'chaser u'v'yeter. Chaser u'v'yeter means it decreased, it increased, meaning not in value, like by price. If it wanted to say by price, it would have said zol v'yoker, right? That the price in the shuk changed. Not, right? Not chaser u'v'yeter. Chaser u'v'yeter sounds like it's missing things. It had added things to it. Okay, shma mina. Now we're going to go to how do we pasken. They don't really go into Rabbi Akiva so much, although a little bit we'll get into it here. Rabbi Akiva says kishat hatviyah. It seems pretty obvious what he means, which is when you get to court and the court demands you have to pay, you go by the value at what it is at that time. And some people say that he's talking about price fluctuating. And it's actually interesting. The Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel are arguing about shevach, the vladon and the giza. And Rabbi Akiva is talking in different terminology. He's talking if the price changed. Some people explain him as also talking about shevach. This is all a machloket in the Rishonim, so I'm not going to get into it right now. Anyway, I'm Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Shmuel paskins halacha ki Rabbi Akiva. We actually hold like Rabbi Akiva, so we had this whole debate. What Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel were arguing about, we don't even hold like them anyway. Umod Rabbi Akiva b'kom sheyesh edim. Here's the only real discussion about Rabbi Akiva. He agrees, though, if witnesses saw me decide to steal this item for myself, okay, and I said in front of witnesses, I'm going to take this for myself, then I lock in at that price. My taima, what's the reason? Tamar kral lashir hu lo yitnenu b'yom hashmato. You have to give it back to the person on the day that you get convicted, so to speak, on the day of your guilt. So we have to define what that means. Normally that means the court. Well, since there's witnesses to what I did, witnesses is as if the court convicted me. That's an interesting theory. Not everyone's going to agree with it, but some people think that Rabbi Akiva would agree that when there's witnesses, it goes by the early moment, okay? When I stole it and the witnesses saw, because that's already Yom Hashmato, the day I became guilty. Amalei Rav Shai Rav Yehuda, Rebbe American? No way, no how. Hachi, I'm a Rabbi Asi, I'm a Rabbi Yochanan. Because look, I'm going to quote Rabbi Asi, who quotes Rabbi Yochanan, who says, Rabbi Akiva, he disagreed with Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, even if there were witnesses to the action. We don't go by the time I stole it. We go by the later, by what it was worth at the time of the conviction. My time, because it says, the Beit Din is the ones who create the chiyuv ashma, not witnesses. Witnesses have to be investigated in court and all that. That's not. Amalei Rabbi Zera Rabbi Abba Bar Papa. Ki azal lahatam. Rabbi Zera says to Rabbi Abba Bar Papa, when you get to Israel, akif asuma ditzur, go up to the heights of Tzur, which nowadays in Lebanon, and then it was in Israel. Ve'ula gabe to Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi. Go to Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi. Ubayim minei and go ask him. Ishmiel leila Rabbi Yochanan lachak Rabbi Akiva or ein lachak Rabbi Akiva. I want to know what he says. Amalei hachi amar Rabbi Yochanan. He comes back and he quotes Rabbi Yochanan saying, just like Shmuel, halachak Rabbi Akiva leolam, except he adds this word leolam, which we're going to have to figure out what that means. My leolam. Amar Rav Ashi, we're going to have two explanations. Shelo tomar hanimi lehecha delei ke'edim, aval hecha ke'edim lo. Don't say that Rabbi Akiva, we hold like Rabbi Akiva only when there's no witnesses. Then we go by Shat HaTviyah. But if there were witnesses, we go by the earlier time. Don't say that. Okay, we hold like Rabbi Akiva across the board. Even if there were witnesses, we always go by when the court convicts. V'inami, or alternatively, the ahadra leduchte v'itavra, that this le'olam is actually talking about a different psak, that we hold like Rabbi Akiva here, and we hold like him about a sugya we just discussed recently, which is what? Remember, if I use it, I'm shalech b'yav. When we previously discussed shlichut yav, what did we say? When am I no longer chayiv and ones? When I return it to its place. And that was Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Akiva says, no, I need the owner to know that I returned it in order to not be liable anymore. He says we hold like Rabbi Akiva there. Okay, that's what we're going to read right now. I'm finished there. That you need the owner to know about it. Okay, and therefore you're going to be chayiv and ones across the board until you tell the owner, oh, listen, I stole it and I'm giving it back to you. But Rava Amar halacha ke Beit Hillel. So we have Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan pasken like Rabbi Akiva. We have Rava holding like Beit Hillel. Okay, and with that we'll end. We'll start with the next Mishnah tomorrow. New topic. So quick review of our daf. We started with the Shulchani and the whole question. Are we talking about, is the Shulchani become like a shoel or like a shomer sachar? Are you going to be chayiv and onus or not? Again, only if you gave them the money to use, not bound up and sealed. Then we had this whole machloket about shalech yabet pikadon. What is the machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel? We have 5 options, so we figured out that it doesn't have to do with prices going up and down. It has to do with the shevach. Do you have to return the extra items, or do you just return the animal as it was at the time that you stole? And then we talked about Rabbi Akiva, maybe it's talking about price change, or maybe it's talking about value change. You know, that the animal increased and decreased in value, and he goes by the Shat HaTviyah. We had a whole thing with it. Will we count Yom Hashmato is also if there were witnesses to the shlichut yad or not necessarily. And then we had a whole thing about who we pasken like. With that, we'll finish today's daf and we'll start with the next Mishnah tomorrow. Wishing everyone a good day and may we be hearing good news soon. B'ezrat Hashem. Have a good day.